Shandas, you can socialize later, please. Good evening, everyone. My name is Malhotra. I'm the Executive Director for TiE Silicon Valley, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our panel this evening. We have a fantastic panel lined up for you today, and you'll hear about that a little bit later. Thank you to the panelists for joining us this evening. Thank you to all of you for coming. What I like to do is to give a little bit of an overview about TiE for the few people in the room who don't know about us and don't know what we do. But before I do that, I want to know who in the room are non-members. Non-members. Raise your hands high. So guess what we're doing for you today? Who are you? Raise your hands. If you sign up right now in the next 5 minutes, you get membership. The regular membership price is $100. You get it for $90 if you sign up right now. She's waiting for you. You can get up and do it right now. I'm counting to 10.
Can I get credit?
I'm not kidding. I'm serious.
Can I get credit for the extra 30 that I spent?
It's a fantastic deal because if you're a guest and you come to two events for $50, you're already paying more than the membership price today. Less than 30 cents a day. Yay, we got one taker. Woo! All right. I'm not an auctioneer by training or trade.
Hey, this is a true location-based service.
This is a true location-based service. So all the rest of you are members then, or you just didn't want me to pick on you? Is that what it is? Okay. So we were founded right here in the Silicon Valley in 1992 by a group of entrepreneurs, mostly from the South Asian region. They came here and they became very successful beyond their wildest imaginations. And they did this really based on their brains and their education and said, you know, we would like to help other entrepreneurs succeed. We didn't have a lot of help doing the things that we did at the time. And so that's what they did. They came together. They would come together on a monthly basis. They would tell their stories. They would bring other successful entrepreneurs of their time. And then, so the network grew. That was in 1992. Here we are in 2011, almost 20 years later, with 57 chapters in 14 countries. And the sole mission and purpose of TiE is to foster entrepreneurship. And the Silicon Valley chapter remains the mother chapter and the beacon of light for all of the other chapters. We have three major stakeholders of TiE. We have our general members. Many of you are general members. We have, and the general membership is made up of, we serve a very small portion of the population, and that's entrepreneurs. So if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a serial entrepreneur, you're helping support an entrepreneur, you're welcome at TiE. But the criteria is entrepreneurship. We also have another category of member called our charter membership base. Our charter members are invited to be part of this group. It's a much smaller group. In the Silicon Valley, we have around 300, and these are very highly successful entrepreneurs, very highly successful corporate executives or high-level academics, and they're invited to be part of this group, and we ask of them something very important, probably the most valuable thing that we can ask of a person, and that's their time and their intellectual capital. And they give that to the entrepreneurial community very freely. So they serve as our chairs for our special interest groups. They serve on our board of directors. They serve as our TiECon conveners. They serve as our mentors, and they really believe in giving back to the entrepreneurial community. We have several charter members in the room today. Can you raise your hands for me, all of you? Oh, great, there's a whole bunch of them. So you, all the rest of you should find out who they are and go and sit next to them and go and get to know them, because they have tremendous knowledge, tremendous networks, and I guarantee you'll make a friend, advisor, business partner, whatever you want, you'll get from them. And above all, probably a great mentor for your life and your business. I'd like to point out a couple of charter members who are in the room, and that's our board of directors, starting with our president, Mr. Vish Mishra. Vish, can you stand, please? Vish is a self-proclaimed TiE junkie, so if you don't know him, then I'm very surprised, because he pretty much knows everybody. Then we have our systems chair, Sanjay Mittal, sitting next to Vish. We have Paul Singh, our marketing chair, who is the one who came up with this brilliant idea for this evening that only one person took advantage of. And then we have Venk Shukla, our charter member chair, who's sitting in the back over there. So thank you all for your contribution on the board. We also have our sponsor community. Our sponsors are lifeblood of the organization. So charter members provide the backbone, the sponsors are the lifeblood of the organization. And there's no way that we could do the events and programs and the quality of the things that we do without the support of our sponsors who come from all the VC community, the law firms, corporates, and service providers. So we thank all of our sponsors for their generous support. And then we have a fourth category of stakeholder, and that's our volunteers. And so the volunteers make up all the other three. So there's, we run TiE with a very lean staff, but we do all the things that we do because of the network of volunteers that's made up of all of you. So we couldn't do the things that we do without the volunteers either. So thank you for the contributions that you have made to TiE over the last 19, 20 years as well. We do about 50 to 60 of these kinds of programs a year. We have the special interest groups along the 5 technology verticals. We have the TiE Institute, which is our boot camp, our how-to, our educational sessions. We have our networking mixers, which you come, have a drink, have some appetizers, and you get to just meet and greet in a professional setting. We have our Mentor Connect and Startup Leadership programs. We have our My Story, which is a program that we launched this year featuring entrepreneurs who have had successful exits in the last year to 18 months. In fact, we have our My Story speaker from December sitting right over here, Mr. Vikram Joshi, right over here. Raise your hand, Vikram. And you can come hear him on December 6th. He can tell you his fantastic story. We also have a program that we launched last year called TiE Angels. TiE Angels is our seed investment forum, made up of our charter member community. And we've funded, in 1 year, we have funded 10 companies to about $3.5, $4 million, and companies along all of the sectors. So if you're looking for seed funding for your company, or you know somebody looking for seed funding for their company, a promising company, I encourage you to apply to TiE Angels. It's been a fantastic platform for our entrepreneurs and an addition to help the entrepreneurs succeed. We have our steering committee, some members from the steering committee of TiE Angels. Our chair, Venk Shukla, is sitting, you've met him before, and then Vish Mishra is on the steering committee as well. I think that's it as far as the steering committee tonight. And then, how many of you have been to TiECon? How many came to TiECon 2011? Fantastic, wasn't it? Did you know that TiECon was listed this year in Worth Magazine as one of the top 10 conferences for ideas and innovation, along with TED and the World Economic Forum? We are extremely, extremely proud of that, and that is quite an accomplishment, and kudos to our entire team of volunteers and staff for that honor this year. So TiECon 2012, May 18th and 19th. You don't want to miss it. Put it in your calendar. It's going to be another fantastic event this year. Before I conclude, I'd like to thank my staff. You met Patricia. They do tons of work in the background and make this thing work. And then, of course, thank you to the board of directors. I would like to also thank our chairs and hosts for this evening, Jay Rawat and Shalini Govilpai. Shalini, raise your hand. They're the co-chairs for this particular special interest group. And with that, I'm going to have Jay come up and introduce the panel. So thank you for your attention.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah, no, it's on. Well, thanks, Kiran. So I will let the panelists introduce themselves. As we know, the topic for today's panel is location-based services. And for those of you who have been attending the sessions from InternetSeg, you're probably seeing a pattern here. We're touching upon all the verticals that are supremely hyped right now. So we started with social, talked about social commerce, and we had a panel on mobile applications. So we covered social, mobile, and now we are on to local. So let's see how real is local and what's hype and what's not. So a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any cell phones, please take them out and turn them on and start tweeting instead of turning them off. I think that's a new way to go about it. You can do your check-ins and let everybody know that you're attending this session. There was a deal as well that was just offered to become a member, so we are already seeing some location-based services here. So let's start with that. When you talk about location-based services, what is your definition of location-based services? We talk about Groupon and Foursquares, NFC, and all kinds of different technologies that are thrown into this whole location-based services umbrella. So in your mind, what is the definition of location-based services, and how is it supposed to transform the way we buy things, we pay for things, we get information, and so on? Can you just give an overview of what your thoughts are? So, and before we do that, why don't you introduce yourself, and then you can answer the question as well.
Sure. So thank you for having me here. Everyone can hear me? So my name is Rohit Dhawan. I'm the lead product manager for Facebook Pages. How many of you know what Facebook Pages are? Curiosity. So everyone probably knows what Facebook is. So basically, if you imagine you yourself are on Facebook as a person, that's what we call a timeline or profile. Anything that's not a person, so be it your dog, be it President Obama, be it a government, be it a small business, a large business, they're all hosted on Facebook Pages. So that's the product that I manage. And so very focused on large brand businesses as well as local businesses. So in terms of LBS, I'm incredibly excited by location-based services. I mean, for me, at the broadest level is anything where you use your computer and the current location. And the computer can be a mobile device, it could be your iPad, potentially your laptop, to help your current experience. So I actually really think of it as, the simplest form is like I use CNN.com, showing me news stories based on kind of where I am. But in the most transformative ways for users, it's about consuming information that that other people have provided based on their location. So if I'm at a particular, let's say, a location, understanding what's going on around me, what people have been, what people have done in the past around this location, and those are the type of experiences that Facebook's really trying to kind of enable, sharing content with location.
I'm Rocky Agarwal. I'm a blogger and analyst who does some consulting work for various startups on local and mobile technologies. I've also best known recently for writing about Groupon. If you've read much of the coverage at TechCrunch or VentureBeat or seen Bloomberg or CNBC, the stories about Groupon and how it's practically a Ponzi scheme. That was pretty much me. So, I was alone about 4.5 months ago, and it seems like most of the world has come around to believing some variant of that. In terms of location-based services, I agree with everything Rohit just said, but I would expand that to taking into account future locations and where you will be over time. One of the most exciting things for me about location-based services and social services like Facebook is the degree to which they can connect me with people who I would miss otherwise. I'm going to be in New York over the weekend and for the next couple of days, and I want to be able to connect with people. To the extent that location-based services can take into account my future plans and help me create better plans, I think that's a huge deal.
My name is Eric Keller, Senior Director at a company called Where. It's a location-based media company that was acquired by eBay about 6 months ago. I actually started a daily deals company. Didn't tell Rocky that when I met him tonight. But I've been following his articles and agree with a lot of it. I have a slightly different perspective on other pieces of that model. So yeah, location to me is, it's really about relevance, I think, for us. So we are starting to help small businesses and large merchants run location-based mobile ad campaigns. And location adds a whole new element to things, but it's also an enabler. So we recently ran a campaign for Gillette, who wanted to advertise some deodorant. And so we geo-fenced pharmacy locations for that, but we also ran the ad when it was above 80 degrees. And so because we know where you are, we know a lot more about you. So that's going to just help us from mobile advertising, hyper-local mobile ad platform to just become more and more relevant for our consumers.
So since you talked about Groupon, I think let's I'm sure that everybody wants to talk about Groupon. At least let's get that question out of the way. so let's talk about that. Rocky, of course, you've written a lot about Groupon and why it's a Ponzi scheme and so on. Is your view that the whole daily deals category itself is flawed, or is it that this particular model is flawed?
I think deals will be in existence forever. Deals have been in existence forever. And part of what bothers me about what the conversation around Groupon is as if they invented deals, and that's absolutely not true. Deals have been in existence probably since the beginning of time. What they did was they took deals and they turned on a massive spam engine and stuck a boiler room with it and called that a revolutionary product, and it's really not. The model that they have is fundamentally flawed in that retailers can't afford to survive on 25% of their normal prices, which is what they normally get after the Groupon discount and what the cut that goes on to Groupon. That just can't be sustained, and what's going to happen is either people will create fake discounts, which we're starting to see some of, so that people create the perception of value. There's a restaurant called Nan and Curry in San Francisco. I looked at a Groupon Now there. The Groupon Now price for a lunch buffet was $10, which I thought was a little bit suspicious. They said it was $13 was the regular price, and you saved about 30%. It was $10 after Groupon Now. Look at their website. Their actual retail price is $8. So people are playing these games to justify this Groupon discount, which increasingly will be fake. So that particular model, because they take out so much of the transaction, isn't going to be something that continues to exist, but some form of discounting will happen. You'll see a lot more of yield management type discounts where there's discounting only when the business would otherwise be empty. There's a company called Savored, which I really love their model, where they will give you a 30% discount off your entire bill at restaurants on Mondays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, whatever nights the restaurant says we're not busy. And at that price, the restaurant, it's profitable for the restaurant, it's profitable for the consumer, it's profitable for the deal company. So those kinds of things make sense to me.
Eric, since you have started,
I think Groupon's problem is they just grew too fast. And I agree with a lot of what Rocky said. I mean, again, I started a small daily deals company. We were slightly more focused on mobile and secondary cities and a bit more personalization. We were only about 9 months into it before we were acquired. But we saw it work for a lot of businesses, and there's different businesses have different margins and different models, and so had Groupon grown more slowly, they would have figured that out along the way and had different commissions for different segments. I mean, restaurants work on 5% gross margins, and some retailers work on 50%, and so having a flat commission for those types of businesses just doesn't make sense. So it's commission and it's relevance. I'm going to keep going back to relevance. Groupon's problem is they can't get relevant right now because if they do, their revenue will shrink, and they're going public in 2 weeks. So had they just taken a slower approach to that, I think they would have solved those two big problems they have.
So, Rohit, any views on that? And by the way, we don't all have to agree. It's more fun if we disagree. I mean, Groupon is the fastest growing company in the history. Come on, somebody should defend it.
So actually, so I think it's a real business. I definitely agree with. I agree with what Eric is saying. I can't say I agree fully with what Rocky was saying. So Facebook actually tried, deals. So we basically had, essentially, Groupon. So from my perspective, it's a real business, and where I agree with Eric was around they grew very quickly. And so in terms of like IPO, people are talking about $20 billion valuation, but the valuation theoretically, let's say, is $2 billion or $5 billion. I agree with that. And they did that over 3 years. A very successful company. I think it's very similar to the 80s, 90s, and the last decade around the PC market, and flash memory, and so on. It's a highly commoditized market, but you can have players like Dell that have operational excellence and just can execute from that standpoint. I think margins will certainly come down, for the companies, in this case Groupon, as well as for how much money is taken from the merchant. But when Facebook tried it, we realized pretty quickly that it was not worthwhile for us to try to invest in having 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 salespeople and competing in a commoditized type business. I think there's better opportunities for companies such as ourselves, so just in terms of providing self-serve tools. So we have a vast number of small businesses that establish a presence on Facebook, and it just feels like it's just starting, where they post deals, and deals could be as simple as, and for those of you who don't know how Facebook pages work, is I'm a small business, I set up a presence, and then I get people to like my page, and then from there, I can show up in people's news feeds when I make a post, right? So if I have 100 people like my page or 1,000 people like my page, I can write a post that could be something as, the weather's beautiful today, you should come to my restaurant. Or if you actually come to our restaurant and you say the word, let's say San Jose Sharks, we'll give you a 10% discount. And so, I definitely think that deals have been around for a long time, and people were doing that before Groupon, and they'll continue to do that. So I just think there's many different variants. I think Groupon will be very successful, but success, as Eric was saying, is redefined.
So let's talk about another company that has been very, at least, successful by some measures and hyped also, Foursquare, right? So far we have seen that it's either the companies that are offering daily deals or the companies who have some game mechanics that have been fairly successful so far. So what's your view on Foursquare? Is that a successful business? Do they have a good business model behind what they're doing today? Anybody wants to take it up?
I don't use Foursquare. I don't check in. Tried it a couple times on Facebook and liked it, but it wore off. I think Foursquare has done a great job building their brand and staying the course in the face of Facebook getting into places. But I don't hear a lot about sustainable revenue model. I think their active user base is, the definition of how active they are is also in question. So I'm not, if anyone here is a big fan of Foursquare, I'm not a believer in that model yet.
So I can't say I'm far from also an expert on Foursquare specifically, but I think a lot of the problem with location-based service, or just any application actually on the internet, is that you have to give a reason. You have to give a reason to people to to write. When I say write, it's like that could be a check-in, to be share something. I think there's fantastic consumption experiences today with location-based services that can be Google Maps, they can be Yelp, but where the success of the product is based on people coming and opening up that app and actually writing something in, saying that I am here, or here's a photo tagged with a location, or anything else that that the fact that the person was there, the location improves experience for others. That's where I think people have struggled a little bit, and I think we've seen a lot of companies have some success with game dynamics, right? So I think it's Foursquare, right, with the mayor and so you kind of feel like the reason I'm writing into this system is because I can be the mayor, I can get recognition, right? And I think we'll continue to see people they feel good about themselves when they come and they get public recognition. I think over time we'll start to see where, and Facebook will be driving this from a platform perspective, but we'll see a bunch of apps built on top of Facebook, where by sharing content, that they feel like they're potentially helping their friends, right? And the friends in some way recognize them back. And I think the next generation of apps will be based very much on that. I don't know how Foursquare will fall into account, but that's kind of my perspective.
I know a lot of the Foursquare team, and I think the team itself is just absolutely brilliant. Some of the smartest people I know are on the Foursquare team. I just, so far, have not seen a lot of widespread use of Foursquare outside of Silicon Valley, outside of New York. And just getting, as Rohit said, getting people to use a separate app to do this type of thing is just incredibly hard. They've done a tremendous job of getting press. They've done a tremendous job of getting brand name deals, but a lot of those deals have no revenue associated with it. They're done just to be able to announce that, hey, we did a deal with American Express, for example. I think, yes, you can check it. They're very good at publicity stunts and driving awareness, but it really hasn't helped their user numbers to the extent that I can see. They've claimed 10 million registered users, but if you back that out, you use standard decay rates, they're probably at 1 million, 2 million actives at best. So they really need to do something to get users adopting the service, and I haven't seen much traction in that. The game mechanics can only take you so far. Most people aren't interested. It was a good bootstrapping mechanism to get the 1 million or 2 million people on the platform, but I don't think it goes far beyond that.
Wow. So two of the hottest location companies, and we don't have a single fan of either of the two companies. Fast forward year 2015. Is Groupon going to be around? Is Foursquare going to be around? Just one answer, one word answer. Eric,
Foursquare, no. Groupon, yes.
Rocky.
But hanging on by a thread, I think.
Okay.
Probably not on Foursquare. Groupon, I think the brand may be around, but it won't be anything like the current product.
Okay.
Yes on both. I would say Groupon might
Safe answer.
Yeah, well, not necessarily. Based on which one is not a safe answer. So I'd say Groupon in its current incarnation, definitely yes, but just won't be as big as the potential that many people think Groupon could be. I think Foursquare in its current incarnation, actually no, but I think they'll reinvent themselves.
Let's ask the audience. What does the audience think? 5 years from now, will Groupon be around? How many people think Groupon will be around after in 5 years? Most people think yes. How about Foursquare? Wow.
Does anyone use Foursquare?
Well, we'll come to the audience question soon. But that's very interesting. Okay, so clearly there are not too many Foursquare fans at all here. So it seems like the game mechanics is something that gives you some benefits early on for bootstrapping, but it is not a sustainable business model. That's what we are arriving at a conclusion on that. So let's, Rohit, about Facebook. You're talking about how Facebook is getting into some of the location-based services business, and Facebook is also a platform. So, TiE is an entrepreneurs organization. We are always thinking about how to use Facebook as a platform, but do it in a way so that we don't become a roadkill of your roadmap. So where do you draw the line? If you can share your thoughts in terms of where Facebook is going, what your roadmap is, so that we can be synergistic with Facebook and not be competitive. Any thoughts on
Sure,
that?
absolutely. So, Facebook is first and foremost a platform company. We view ourselves as having the three key components. First is there's the profile, which is the identity of an individual, or Facebook pages with the identity of anything that's not a person, so we typically call that an entity. And then we have the newsfeed, right? And then we have just the entire platform. Those are kind of like the way we think of the company. We have 800 million users, 350 million mobile users, 500 million people who are using platform apps. Every single day, there's 20 million apps are downloaded daily. So nothing is more important to us than having a successful platform. We recently we just announced on the platform, on the mobile device, new kind of social channels that have existed on the desktop. So think about it. If you want to create an application, what does Facebook offer you? We provide social graphs. You can create amazingly valuable applications where people can take advantage of friend graph, social graph. We provide identities, so you have the Facebook login that you've seen on the desktop. You take advantage of that, and then from there you have this app. You need distribution, right? And we provide app discovery where people can find apps by seeing what the friends have done. So through the newsfeed. So if you create an app, you get a core set of users, and using that, we make it very easy for you to actually take advantage of social channels, which is published into the newsfeed. Once someone sees your app in that newsfeed, they can easily click, add it to my timeline. Right? And that'll be cross platforms. It could be mobile, it could be desktop, tablet, different levels of feature phones and so on. And once they add it, and then they share, any of those users that can share further information, they can share with their friends. We've enabled notifications. And so you as a recipient of a friend of yours maybe playing a certain game on an application or taking advantage of an app, you'll get what we call the jewel notifications. Those are the red things at the top, and says that this friend wants to let you know something, they've shared some content with you. So that's a little detailed, but in the end, I just want to highlight that we very much think of ourselves as a platform, and we're very focused on app discovery, so enable users to easily discover apps. And you think about there's probably millions of apps in iTunes and App Store, but it's so tough to actually find an app. And what we're enabling is your friends, if they're using an app, they can inform you that these are the apps I'm using. You take advantage of that. Once you actually take advantage of that, make it very easy for you to share directly with your friends in terms of like what you're doing on that app. So we kind of think of ourselves as an app discovery and distribution channel, if that makes any sense. The parts that we're focused on specifically with identity is, let's say the business side is pages, right? So we're making it very easy for a page to create a presence. They can get fans, and then once they have fans, they can publish out again to the newsfeed. And we think that enabling the content to be shared is another thing that we're kind of enabling through the platform. So that's again the newsfeed and so on. And with where location comes into play is any part of the content that you may be sharing, so be it like a photo, be it a status message, be it an event, we think location is so core to that. So we were talking a little bit earlier that I think a month ago there was this thread going around, this meme going around, Facebook's killing places. And that was absolutely not the case. That on the mobile phone, if you click places to check in, we were trying to deprecate that to some degree because we thought location was so core. So anytime you're sharing content, you should be tagging it with location.
So we talked about the two companies that none of you seem to be big fans of. Have you seen any other companies, any other startups, or any other business models in the location-based services space that you do like? Can you share any companies or business models that you think are likely to be successful? Rocky, why don't you start with you?
One of the companies that I'm really excited about is Square. I consider them in the location-based services space, although some people might just define them more as payments. I think they've done a tremendous job of making it really, really simple for people to accept payments who traditionally haven't accepted payments. The fare vendors, the food cards, and they just have made it so simple and so elegant to do that kind of transaction. Right now, I think the big challenge for them is what's their revenue model. Right now, they're processing $2 million worth of transactions on a daily basis, but they're not generating a ton of revenue for themselves out of it. The question is, how do they expand the set of services beyond pure payments to loyalty, to inventory management, point of sale, other things that will generate more revenue than the pure payments does for them today.
I work for PayPal, so Square is not location-based yet, but yes, they're definitely headed there. They're a great payments business for sole proprietors, and they've done, what they've done is they've focused on the consumer experience, being the merchant, and they've designed a very...
You don't think Cardcase and the directory are location-based?
Well, there's no scale there yet, right? If I'm in Boston, there's a couple merchants, so location doesn't help me yet, but it will. I don't know many hot solely location-focused.
Even if not startups, but any business models that you think would make sense for location-based services. What are the kinds of services that will be beneficial to the users and the businesses?
Yeah, this might be a bit of a sidetrack, but on the platform side, and to try to answer that question, what eBay and PayPal have done is they've created a sort of fabric for developers called xCommerce. And being eBay as our parent company, we're starting to think a lot about retail, and location is going to add a lot to sort of blurring the lines between offline and online retail. If you think about retail today in e-commerce is a $300 billion circle on a 2x2, and if you look at retail as a whole, it's $7 trillion. And so location is going to be a big enabler in that model, and startups in that space, or startups leveraging perhaps our fabric for development. We acquired GSI Commerce, we acquired a company called Magento, we have Milo for local inventory, we have Red Laser as a scanner, and so we're trying to mesh all these things together so that developer community and startups can leverage this platform to tackle retail. So I think that's definitely a hot space.
Rohit, any thoughts on, what I'm trying to get at is that, for the entrepreneurs in the audience, is location-based services, technology, or various technologies that are there, and the level of hype that's associated with that, is that justified? Are we going to see any transformational changes going forward, right? And if so, where are they going to come from? It's not going to be the daily deals, it's not going to be the game mechanics, we established that, right? So what is it going to be?
Yes, I'm pretty excited by a lot of the, actually to some degree, deals kind of in the local space, but in a slightly different variant. I think there's a lot of talk about closing the loop, so ensure in terms of driving users to a store, and then the store being able to know that this person came because of potentially of this deal, right? And there's two aspects of it. There's new customers, and then again these new customers come back. And I think some of the problems with Groupon is that the price is so cheap, typical model, 50% off, that why would you come back and pay full price, right? So I think you're going to see there's a lot of innovation kind of deal space to get new customers and get them to come back. And then secondly, with your existing customer base, to actually get them even further engaged. And the where I think some of the technologies that I'm particularly excited by is in loyalty. So there's a bunch of companies, one company for instance called Punch, where they make it just very easy for, instead of you carrying 30 different loyalty cards in your wallet, you go to, let's say, a taqueria, and they will give you a card, and your fifth burrito is free. You have that just on your phone as an app, and you go into the stores and you basically punch it. And then what they've done is they indicate to the user to potentially scan the receipt, and the receipt goes back to the business then verifies that this customer's definitively been there. And it's a pretty kind of manual process, but in the end, it just saves, it makes the user, instead of having 20 different location loyalty program cards, they now have one, this app, Punch. And from a business perspective, is that they actually could roll out loyalty programs at scale and actually have them work and re-engage their customers. So I'm pretty excited by that. And then I think the aspect of the existing customer coming back and then sharing online, the fact that here's a business that I come to and I come to again, I think that's actually going to drive a lot of word of mouth advertising, and the business can take advantage of that to actually get new customers in the door.
Well, I think we have somebody from Punch in the audience.
I was just going to say, I recognize that.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing is that you're looking at location-based services not necessarily as a standalone app, but more as a basic framework that can enable new functionality and new features, but not necessarily like a Foursquare application, which is a specific application that is focused on location, but more looking at location as an enabler. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think it was Eric Schmidt from Google who was talking about local commerce, who said, that's the GDP, right? So I just think that location, the biggest influencer location data is going to have is on commerce, not, and games will still be there, and finding out where, if your friends are around the corner, but it's really going to affect commerce. And whether it's deals or offers or a retailer being able to liquidate retail at the end of a week, or even a food stand or whatever, and being able to instantly reach people within a quarter-mile radius who fit a certain profile, is going to be very powerful. And it's, as soon as people are ready to give up their location in exchange for better service, which for me, I will do it tomorrow. I'm happy to give my privacy, my location privacy away in exchange for better service from a merchant. And I think that's coming in the future.
So you bring up a good point. So let's talk about privacy. Right. So the basic criteria behind location-based services is that I'm giving up my location information, right? And in return, I am hopefully getting some offers and some deals and some other things getting pushed to me, right? When does it stop being useful and start being creepy, and how do you sort of draw that line?
I think there's what I'm willing to share with my service provider and what I'm willing to share with the public. If you think about one company that's potentially tracking you all the time, besides your cell phone company, is your credit card company. American Express knows where I check in by where I swipe my card probably 50 times a month. They know the businesses I go back to, they know the businesses I go once and stop, they know how much I spend. They've got a lot of great data that they don't do a whole lot with that could be tremendous for a location-based service. But I wouldn't want every one of my American Express transactions published for the world to see. Not because I'm doing anything weird, but you know, it's just an uncomfortable thing. I might want to go into my statement and say, you know what, I'm fine sharing this restaurant. That was a good one. Let me share that with my my Facebook following. So I'm willing to share all that data with American Express and with Facebook, not willing to have that all published out to the whole world, which is, if you think of one of the big privacy disasters in the last 4 or 5 years, it was Facebook's Beacon product, where they ended up publishing a lot of data. They got in trouble with the Video Privacy Act for publishing blockbuster movie viewing data. But that was because it was all published, as opposed to giving the user control over what's published.
Yeah, I mean, from a product design perspective, so Facebook, it's very much around sharing information. So I'll answer the question slightly differently in terms of how I think about it from a privacy front, just building products. I think that, the obvious is there's probably like 3 parts to it. So first is, designing the product. Secondly is how you're going to message it, right? How you talk about it, because what the product actually is and what people kind of interpret to be is often very different, and that's where companies typically get in trouble. And then third is typically how you roll out a product. So kind of from a product design perspective, like the biggest flaw that I've seen that most people, often like myself, kind of fall into is that you kind of get a good idea and you kind of like, oh, this is going to be like great, we're going to do this, and then you start talking a little bit about privacy, and then you start focusing on the edge cases. And you try to solve for like the edge cases, and often like you get to this kind of weird state. You're like, okay, we'll solve for like perfectly this way, and you end up designing the product that solves for that edge case, but the original thing that you kind of intended, like you just lost. So I always like tell people that you just start for like what is like the most important aspect of kind of this feature, like in terms of like sharing information. So for instance, like Facebook check-ins, we thought about like why would someone want to check in, right? And again, as I said earlier, with kind of these consumption devices, like when you're getting someone to like write, there has to be like a reason for them to write. So you think of you model in the real world, like when I check in, when I call up my wife and say I'm at this location, it's often that I'm at this location with this person, right? Like rarely you're going to broadcast to your friends that you're just at this location. So it's so critical that you say that kind of who you're with. And that was like the fundamental thing of our check-in product. Where you are, who you're with, right? And now think about it, that can be creepy. You can say, okay, well, I'm with, we're not friends on Facebook yet, but like I'm with Jay, right? And theoretically I can be at some random location and Jay gets in trouble with, why me? Because you look like you might get in trouble, right? With if you're married, your spouse and so on. And so then you end up like just in a bad place. Whereas we thought, okay, in the real world, right? Like today, I can be at a location. I can call up my friends and say like here I'm with Jay, and that's the way it works today. So we modeled in such a way that you can tag your friends, right? And you're at the location too, because you say where you are, and then you can tag your friends. But if you're actually lying, right? Like if Jay is actually not there, then Jay's just gonna defriend me, right? Because in the real world, if I keep like making up stuff around Jay is gonna tell all our friends that I'm just a bad person, right? Probably a stronger language. So Facebook could defriend me. So we kind of started from that standpoint. That what's the optimal use case? Let's do that really well. And then when we thought about okay, like privacy from the standpoint of like these edge cases, it just became a lot clearer for us. That okay, like yeah, there is a situation where I can like lie about Jay and so on, but in the real world I can do that as well. And then secondly is because it's what I just described took a few minutes and may still not have completely sunk in. It's very critical like how you talk about it, roll out products. So we found that you need to inform the people who need to know, and so that's typically the privacy advocates. And if they're not on your side, they're the ones who the press and the journalists are gonna get quotes from. And if they're not giving you positive quotes, then you're in trouble. And then secondly, when you brief them, you need to have very simple messages that users can understand, because that's what users are gonna be reading. hard aspect of it is, like when you roll out the product, instead of just turning on for everyone, particularly, if you think from a Facebook or a Google or kind of a PayPal example, we already have so many users, you switch it up on them, then they typically assume the worst. And often it's good to give a period and kind of have people opt in to the new change if there's a change, and get those people, the early adopters, excited by it. Well, I can be the first one to take advantage of this. Right? You could turn something in that could be perceived as quite negative by actually making it quite positive.
Actually, Rohit, I had a question for you on that particular implementation, because one of the privacy issues that came up, and I don't have a point of view on this, I'm just curious to understand the decision making, was my ability to tag somebody else that I'm with. Because you and I might be going out to a bar, I may have told, or you may have told your wife that you're working late, and if I tag you that I'm at the bar with Rohit, that potentially gets you into trouble.
Yeah, so I can have it where it could be auto-accepted or I can accept it.
But by default, it's set so that anybody can tag you, right? You have to go turn that off.
No, it's such that only my friends can tag me.
Okay. But in that scenario, I can still tag you and get you in trouble.
If you're not friends.
Yes.
Which we're not right now, right?
You're not going to accept my friend.
But see, like this, but it's like this is kind of like the edge case, right? Like you can think, okay, like we can roll out this feature and then people can get in trouble and so on. But we spend a lot of time just optimizing like the 99% kind of use case, where people are who they say they are. They kind of want to do good things.
Right.
And then the way we
I
get
would
around
say
it.
that one's not an edge case. I have that happen on Foursquare.
I think the moral is that choose your friends carefully.
Exactly. Yeah, if you did that, I wouldn't be friends with you, right? I'm not friends with
You
you.
only get to do that once.
So, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about if I'm a company that's developing any location-based applications or services, there are two sides of this coin. One is that I'm trying to get users to adopt my service or the application that I built, right? Any thoughts on some best practices there? How can I increase the virality of my product, or what are some of the best practices in terms of I think you want to talk about some better advanced imaging and crowdsourcing and some of those concepts that we can incorporate into these applications that can increase the user adoption. And then the second component is that I want to make it useful and scalable for the businesses, right? So let's start with the user component first, and then we'll talk about how do you make it a scalable model for the businesses so that the businesses are benefiting from it, right?
Yeah, so I think it touched on some of this, earlier in terms of how do you get users to engage with your product. So I'll answer the user part in two parts. One is how do you get them to engage with it, and then how do you make it viral. So it's so important, again, that you have to give them a reason to write information. So typically the content creators. So even on Facebook, I don't know the stats, but most people come every single day, and they're consuming information, right? So there's the consumption side, and then there's the write side. And typically the people who are writing are a small percentage of your overall base. So it's so important that it takes time. You just cultivate them, and sometimes it can take years. Sometimes it can be lucky and it takes hours. But you just cultivate them and make sure they feel like rewarded. Make sure they feel like recognized for their efforts. And we talked earlier about game dynamics. But I'm a big believer that you can recognize them and you can pay them and so on. But I don't think anything is more valuable than having the friends recognize them, right? And so I just really encourage, and obviously bias coming from Facebook, but I think that's the future. Just social, and there's so many opportunities around that. So I would encourage, just ensuring how do you cultivate that, content creators to provide a good consumption for the people on the other end. In terms of virality, I found that just in terms of looking at what the applications are built upon Facebook, and we can actually bring it back to kind of daily deals. So you can imagine that you see a deal on be on Facebook or maybe be on a Groupon, you're kind of interested in it, right? So that's, let's say, top of the funnel, that you saw it, and then this one I'm kind of interested in. And then there's a small subset of the ones that you actually buy, and then I guess in Groupon's case, more often than not, I think, you end up, the deals that you bought, you end up going and taking advantage of them, right? But if that share event happened at the very end, where I walked into the store and I took advantage of my Groupon and then shared that, you're talking about at the bottom of the funnel, right? And typically when we think of virality, it's getting people to share their experiences. And the earlier you can get them to share, near the top of the funnel. So even if it's that, oh, here's a deal that I'm semi-interested in, and sharing that aspect, that will be probably 100 to 10,000 times more than the kind of shares at bottom. And ideally you get like shares like throughout, but we've seen the really successful like viral products be that they get the share like as early as possible.
So let me stop you there. Yeah, I think it's clear to everyone that word of mouth recommendation makes a lot of sense, right? And that creates good virality. Let's go one step deeper. How do you get to that? How do you get people to start recommending you? Facebook has a policy against incentivizing user to share, right? So you can't really just start incentivizing users and saying, okay, I'll give you something if you share with your friends. So any thoughts on best practices on how do you get people to start sharing and recommending the products?
It's a tough question in the sense that it's there's no like right answer in terms of morality. Typically, the easiest is obviously if you have a great product and then you have these advocates, endorsers.
When the audience knows the answer to easy questions, so that's
Yeah.
the tough questions.
Sorry. Let me think for a second.